In '02, the SARS was a 9.6 mortality rate, and the MERS 2012 was a 34.4%. The reason why SARS and MERS didn't go worldwide is because the virus killed the host before they could really push it on to someone else. That's why you don't see, I mean, it was a big deal at that time. Dr. Shea talked a little bit about it when it came down, but I just wanted to show that perspective on there, what the mortality rate is at that point. One of the doctors that, when we were talking about this, when they looked at that number, 118,000, he said you could look at that number, but times that by 5. Because there's so many people that are not really affected, they don't get tested, they get the sniffles, and they go home and they don't get tested, so that could be higher. And by no means, when I say stuff like this, am I downplaying COVID-19, just so you know that. We are preparing for it, but I'm just showing you the numbers and what people are saying. This is as of yesterday. I just wanted to bring this up from the CDC. They're still saying that in rural areas and all that, the risk assessment for us is still relatively low. But for certain people like healthcare workers, we do have an elevated risk of exposure. Travelers obviously traveling outside of the country, people that have been in contact with someone that has COVID-19, but I just wanted to bring this up. That was as of yesterday what the CDC risk assessment was. The severity, it's a very new disease. They're learning if there's changes every single day. The complete clinical picture right now is not really understood. The illnesses have ranged from very mild to including death, and usually the death is usually people greater than 60 or 80 years old. I mean, the older people are really being affected with this. It's just too new of a disease. They really are still compiling the data, and every day you hear something new about it. So
it's not affecting the very young.
Very minimally, from what I mean. It could range. I mean, and actually, the case if you heard about yesterday in the cities, the 30-year-old that's in critical condition. That was the first time I really got concerned about COVID-19, to be honest. I mean, and when I talked to our pathologist, Dr. Vanderwoord, today, he said that concerned him too, that it was a 30-year-old with no really underlying issues that became critical. But, I mean, who's to say that he may have had something else going on? He could have had the flu on top of it before he got COVID-19. But, and by no means am I an expert either. I'm just putting out what I'm finding on CDC. So MDH, they update this every single day. And right now, they have tested 222 with 5 positive in Minnesota, and they've all been relatively in the cities. This is on the CDC. This is what they're putting out. If you have patients if you have fever, cough, shortness of breath, and you traveled in the past to an area that's been affected, you can think about calling in. The incubation time, they really don't know yet, but they're thinking it's on average of 14 days. This is the flow chart to identify potentially if you may need to be tested, and I'll get into that in a second. This is put out from the CDC as well. Countryside Public Health, this is on their website. They're kind of telling everyone to prepare, like it's gonna spread at some point, not knowing when it's gonna reach our county this year, maybe next year. But to have stuff stocked up and kind of limit yourself to going out in the town and stay at home if we do have a little bit of an outbreak. Testing. Last week I heard a doctor on CNN say, if you think you got coronavirus, go get tested. Well, there's only, every state, only their Department of Health is doing testing. And they did have requirements on when they would test. Minnesota is actually letting up a little bit on the requirements, and now they're going by what the clinician is saying. First, they're asking them to test for the flu, have them test for any other kind of respiratory illnesses, and if they do meet some of the qualifications, go ahead. But the MDH on the call last week said they will never disregard anyone if they want to have testing. So our providers are up to date on this. They get sent this stuff. We get Health Alert Network messages, and they are, we have to respond to them within 24 hours, and the providers get these messages as well once we get them.
Test kits available?
Test kits are only at MDH right now.
So that takes a day to get to you,
I'll get into that. Oh,
So, okay, so
no,
I'll let you do.
no, that's fine.
I'm here to help.
One thing they're putting out is, you know, they're really, obviously at Appleton, we will never turn anyone away. But if someone's gonna call in and they're saying, you know, I think I may have been exposed and they're at home, and they're okay if they just got the sniffles, they're asking them to stay at home, and if they need anything, then obviously if it's an emergency to come in, but they're asking if they can stay at home, be cared for by relatives, you know, stay in a separate side of the house. And they're asking if we can do that, if it's suitable for them at home for home care. We've implemented through the CDC guidelines or guidance, we ask patients this when they call in for appointments if they have a respiratory illness. And our front desk asks these questions before we make an appointment. And if by chance they answer any one of these, they will call me or the provider on call, and we have a step-by-step process on what we're gonna do if that happens. So here at Appleton, what are we gonna do? If the front desk gets the call, like I said, they'll call infection control, or the provider on call. We will screen the patient over the phone. If the provider deems the patient needs to be tested, but not at their facility, we will determine the next steps. I've talked to Lori about this. We talked about this yesterday actually, and actually came on the news this morning, so we were ahead of the ball game, so you know. We were talking about collecting samples at the curbside. So we would have the patient pull up, we would go out, collect it there, so they don't have to come into our facility. Another option is we could actually go to the patient's house. Go in there, what's nice about small communities, everyone knows everyone, and it's not too far away. We could have them step outside the front door and collect the swab there, limit the risk of the healthcare provider and coming into the facility. If the patient needs to come to the facility, we will meet the patient outside and give them a mask. And per CDC guidance, and we've kind of made our plan, what we will do is I would have, if I'm talking to the patient, have them meet on the back door behind the nurse's station. We would give them a mask. I would clear the hallways, close all the doors, and we would escort them to room 110, which is a negative airflow room. Negative airflow rooms, is, if anyone doesn't know, is all the air is sucked in the room and pushed outside, so it doesn't go from inside the room out to the hallway. So we would have them in a negative airflow room. At that point, at 110, if you don't know where it's at, it's right next to our CT room. The doors will be closed, and our bone density room would be our don and doffing room for our healthcare providers. And when I say don and doffing, that's where they put their protective gear on. And I'll get into our protective gear a little bit, and they would use 110 as that patient. We would collect the sample from there, and we have directions in the lab on how to collect it, and we would send it to MDH. And we would either send it through to Minnesota Department of Health via the courier system that goes through Rice, because they have a courier that goes to Minnesota Department of Health every afternoon, which means if we had it in the morning, we would send it with the courier to get it to Wilmer, and they would send it on. Or we would FedEx it, or we would be talking about it whether we want to have someone just drive it to MDH to have it tested. It's a one-day turnaround time, and they have the capability right now of doing 100 tests a day. I'm assuming they're going to get a lot more than 100 tests a day going forward, but MDH is working on different avenues on how they're going to be doing testing. And I did see something that LabCorp, obviously the private labs are really looking at this, trying to get this test on board, because MDH doesn't charge anything. But if LabCorp or Quest can charge it, they're going to be charging a lot of money probably. So that's to be determined on how the testing is going to go down the future. This is just continue. We'll assess and determine the sample needs to be collected, like I said, and if it is collected, it will be sent, like I just told you, via FedEx or to the MDH or through the Caris Health courier system. And also at that point, I talked to Lori about this too. And we decided that if this does happen, we will initiate an incident command, because we're going to have to get finance involved if we need more protective equipment. We're going to have to get our public information officer involved in what kind of statement we're going to put out. But all of this too will be taking direction either from the Countryside Public Health and Minnesota Department of Health on what they're recommending for us to do. Our healthcare safety protection, currently we have, we've been tested for, we have N95 masks, which are currently in stock at 360. That means we have 120 small, medium, larges, and most of our staff were tested less than a year ago, and that will expire May, so they are good to go for that. But if they haven't been tested, or if we do go past our expiration date in May, we have 6 VersaFlows, which are PAPRs, which I'm sure you've seen on the TV, where they got the big hoods and they got the thing in the back, and we have 6 of them. With reusable hoods, that means that after they're done, we can just wipe it off with some chlorine water, and then we would hang them to dry, and then obviously we have gowns, gloves, and goggles. And goggles are currently recommended as well, but the hoods have a big shield on. What we're doing right now, we're doing weekly calls with the Minnesota Department of Health, which is every Thursday at 12:30. They come on, they tell us what their guidance are, what's going on. We had a meeting, Andrea went to a meeting with the Countryside Public Health today regarding what's going on within the county. Me, Lori, and Mitch had a call with long-term care. Minnesota Department of Health called today. And we are in constant communication with the Southwest Healthcare Preparedness Coalition that if we get into an issue with PPE or something, they will help us find that. If we can't that, we'll go higher to MDH and see if they can get that for us. And also, we're in constant communication with staff and letting them know what's going on. But that's all I got. Any questions?
You're doing a good job, Pete.
Yeah.
Keeping up on all that stuff. It's constant.
It is, it's
Changes
changing,
all of it, yeah.
it's changing every single day, so.
Is there any recommendations right now for nursing home, like visiting, like, you know, bringing kid, like my kid or whatever, is it like not allowed now?
We
or-
actually talked about today, some nursing homes are closing.
Yeah, I've
Maybe
heard
time,
that.
Lori, and-
Yeah, go ahead. Mitch and, actually, just, and then you go ahead and explain it, but Mitch and Jason and I had this call, and then we've kind of developed a plan. Tomorrow, we're going to implement that, but go ahead and.
It's just that you can never be more safe than sorry. You don't know who's, I mean, they really don't know how this is spreading. I mean, like I said, the guy down in the cities is he ran into someone supposedly that was traveling worldwide. But the kind of plan that we have that we're gonna put in place tomorrow is we're shutting the nursing home down and having people, not shutting it down totally, having people come through the front and we'll screen them up front, where they've been, see if they have a tent, and allow them to go into the nursing home. But we're gonna be putting some restrictions, there'll be tweaks, and all that. If I'm wrong in what I'm saying, let me know, we can
No,
talk about it.
no, we're gonna kind of hone it all in tomorrow. The other thing we're gonna do is after hours, we'll have, if somebody comes up after hours or after clinics closed, and on the weekend, we'll put a sign, we're gonna put signs outside saying call the nurse's station, and they will then allow them to come in, but do that screening there, and then if, you know, they don't pass the screening, they have to go. We're also gonna call all the families and ask them if they're at any thought thinking they're starting to feel sick or sick of any kind, to just stay away and allow their family. But what Mitch had said too is, we're fighting the kind of the battle of, you know, these people wanna see their families, or maybe somebody's closer to end of life, and for them and their family, it's extremely important to still see each other. So we have to kind of balance that between keeping them safe physically and allowing them that psychosocial thing of being able to be with their families. So that's where we're at, but we're trying to find a good balance, because we know if it gets there. The other thing is we're looking at potentially screening every single one of our employees too, because of course they're coming in there to work. So, and I don't mean screening as in swabbing, I mean screening as in, have you been out of the country? Have you been around somebody? Well, I can't remember all the questions, but
Right.
there's several questions we're
You know
asking
anyone
in
that
the
was in China
clinical.
last week, or?
Yeah. So we're gonna fine tune that tomorrow and get that put in place by end of day as far as the care center, and the families will be getting notified exactly of what we're gonna do. There are some, I think Luther Haven has completely closed it off to the public altogether, and I'm not sure what made them make that decision in Montevideo, but Mitch, I think you said it's about 60-40, 60% are not closing, and
Yeah.
about 40 are of the people you've talked to, so If it looks like, what they're saying is if you're butted up against a county or in a county that has identified one, you need to take the more extreme measures. If you're removed from that, you can safely take a little less severe measures, and that's what we're doing, is just following MDH recommendation, so.
And then Andrew, as far as kids, every like the middle of November towards like, or December, whenever we see that first influenza type case, I always shut the nursing home down to kids, like as far as bringing kids in. If a kid comes in with their parents, that is okay if it's like one kid, but as far as whole classes coming in to do activities and stuff, we shut that down every year until around April, May, when influenza stops being around.
We're also looking at asking if family does come up to visit to try to stay in the resident room rather than being out and about, just another precaution. But we'll get that all fine tuned tomorrow.
Have they determined any information as to how easily this is spread and what the incubation?
Well, the
or what
incubation
timeframe
period
are
was,
people-
they don't know it's so new, they think it's roughly 14 days, and one of the slides I had up, they think that the infection rate is 1.4 to 2.5 people per person that's infected.
Spread by, you know,
Airborne.
airborne?
Yeah. So, I mean, some of the things I've been hearing or reading, one of them is I think there's up to 6 biotech companies now that are making great strides in trying to get a vaccine. First I heard was 1.5 years out, and last I heard was 1 year out. And I'm sure with everything going on, the FDA is gonna push it through as fast as they could. So hopefully by next year, if this resurfaces again, we'll be looking at having everyone getting vaccines. So instead of saying I'm home with the flu, I'm gonna say I'm home with the corona. The Lyme. But, so, I mean, hopefully that'll come to it. Like I say, I'm not downplaying it all by no means. One doctor that I did hear talk said, this is the worst pandemic that we'll probably see in our lifetime, but fortunately it's not as deadly as a pandemic as people have seen in the past, so.
How many zero air rooms do you have, or the negative airflow rooms, just one?
No, well, we have, speaking about the plan, so yeah, we have the 110, and then we have the emergency room and the procedure room that are also negative airflow, but we won't want to use them. Another potential possibility is we have what's called a Minty, that we can put into a room and blow the room and make it a negative airflow room. And I gotta look at the specs, because this is years ago now that when we first got it, but like say that corridor down by where the pharmacy is, we could put a wall up and put the Minty on at the end of the door, and we make that whole wing negative airflow. So we do have options there. Worst case scenario, we'd fall back onto our H1N1 plan that we had, where if we had a massive number of people coming in that we had to care for, we may turn it into do a makeshift ward, because we do have cots that we can use for that, but that hopefully will not happen.
Prison also has negative airflow rooms out there. There are about 8 to 10 of them.
And that is one of our memorandums of understanding with our emergency preparedness with the county, that we can use the prison if need.
Anything else for Jason? Thank you. Good work.
Nice job, Jason.
Okay, moving on to new business.
Dan, do you know what the hospital board
Yeah.
is?
What do you want to do there? Somebody want to go to church?
So I'll just ask.
Do we have any more?
I'll ask for a motion to adjourn now. Second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, the same. We are adjourned from the hospital board. Sit here and listen. All right.
Hey Jason, do you wanna hit that? Power button? Still the batteries.
Yeah. Should we break it up?
That's
Trigger. Any other new business? We'll talk about the trigger parameters for resolution.
Well, I threw that 325 number out there, and it sounds like that's a very realistic floor. So
Yeah, I think that
it
does
sounds like
give
there isn't a
you,
minimum, you know, Jake is looking for, even if it was If it was 325, I think he'd be very happy with that. So that was my thought.
I think that gives you a lot of flexibility, particularly so if you, so I think that the first question is everyone comfortable seeking that rating?
I think we should.
Yes.
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 I would think so.
And knowing that a lot of that heavy lifting will fall on the.
Is that something we need to vote on? I mean, we can just say.
You know, like part of the resolution, you have to adopt a rating.
Right, yep. So, in that case, yes, I think that that gives you, if 325 is what you're comfortable with, I think that gives you a lot of flexibility.
There's something really good with that? You guys say-
yeah.
Motion to adopt resolution 2020-11 approving the issuance of general obligation healthcare facilities refunding bonds, series 2020A, with a minimum net savings of at least $325,000.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded for $325,000 on the resolution. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And so the public health and safe drinking water.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. Here just this evening to give an update as far as where we're at with the water treatment plant and new well facilities. I don't have a PowerPoint, I don't have an outline. Maybe you're disappointed, but none of that tonight. So we are proceeding with the design process. We actually had a good meeting with Willie and the public works staff here probably 2 to 3 weeks ago. Sat down, just wanted to get together with everybody. Make sure we're all on the same page moving forward. I think it went really well. We actually sat down with some major water demand users, or major water users in town lately. So we've been making good headway. The only thing that I'm looking for this evening is we are moving ahead with submitting a application to the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority. And since this project has to do with drinking water improvements, we are submitting specifically the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund. And that application is due to the Drinking Water Revolving Fund on March 30th. And I've been working with Willie to get that application prepared, put together. There are a number of items that we need to get together to complete and submit that application, so we've been working together on that. And one item that is required is an actual resolution of application that needs to be passed by the city. And hopefully you've got that before you this evening. It looks like, well, I printed it off the city's website before I came, it's resolution 2020-12. It's simply called resolution of application. Basically what it says is that the city of Appleton is intending to submit an application to the Drinking Water Revolving Fund. The estimated cost is included in here, which right now is at $4.8 million. It basically also says that the city has the legal authority to apply for the loan, and that the city has the financial, technical, managerial capacity to repay the loan and ensure that there's proper construction, operation, and maintenance for the project for its design life. Now, for this particular treatment plant and well we're looking at a substantially longer design life than 20 to 25 years, but for the water treatment plant, again, the design life for something like that is 20 to 25 years. So that would be the design life for that facility. And then the last thing that we've got in here as well is there's a section in here that I always like to include. It's if something happens up there at that treatment plant where we have to bring in a pump or a major piece of equipment to put in there that we could possibly take from that old treatment plant and put it in the new one, you could get reimbursed for that equipment. So basically what it is, it's the intent to use proceeds of the loan to reimburse construction expenditures made prior to the issuance of general obligation bonds. So again, that just protects the city if something happens up there where we have to replace a piece of equipment now. We have to spend the money to do that now, and we can basically transfer that piece of equipment over to the new plant. You can get reimbursed for that equipment once we move ahead with the project. So, are there any questions on the resolution that I presented? Are there any questions on anything else regarding the whole treatment plant process and the well process? Like I said, we are continuing with the design application. We're going to submit on March 30th or by March 30th. And we're looking at finishing up the design probably in June or July. Advertising for bids late summer, and our hope is to get started with construction this fall or else right away next spring. So that's our hope and estimated timeline at this time, so.
I
Any
think
questions?
we're all hoping for some money from the state, obviously awarded. What is a realistic timeframe to find out, you know, is it in the fall, is it next year? Whether or not we're able to get some of this cost covered.
Yep, I would say after we get bids, Andrew, and actually I'll have a better idea once we actually get the information from the city that we can complete the application. I was actually here yesterday with Willie, and what I would like to do still is come down at some point, and I don't know if this is something to cover during a council meeting, or maybe a special work session with the council, to sit down and kind of go through how grant and loan determinations are made through the PFA and other funding programs. Right now, based on the numbers that I received from the city, I think this last summer, I received some numbers from the city as far as what is your existing debt service, what are your current O&M costs, and then what's the estimated debt service that you're gonna accrue as a result of this project. From what I can tell, there is a possibility that you could receive some grant for this particular project, but until I get some updated information from Willie, it's really hard for me to sit down and tell you one way or the other. The other thing is this is a competitive program, which all programs that you're receiving grant or low interest loan for are competitive. So it comes down to where you score as far as compared to other projects as well. So right now, like I said, Andrew, to answer your question, I'm kind of taking the political route here and kind of beating around the bush a little bit. But once I get more information from Willie, I will be able to give you a better indication whether or not I think you'll qualify for some grant. And maybe at the next council meeting, possibly in April, or maybe if we have a work session or something like that, I'd love to come down and get into the weeds on some of that stuff and really explain to you how it's determined and where we're at right now with the city's O&M costs and debt service, so. Yeah.
Looking at our plant and dealing with rural water and stuff, you don't see any issues with our plant, I mean, having major problems until we get this project going.
Well, I really don't right now, Dan, but with that being said, you know, knock on wood, hopefully nothing, you know, major happens up there in the meantime. You know, we're still looking at starting construction probably again this fall. That new plant probably won't be online and operating until the following fall, the following summer.
That's
So.
what concerns me, we're at that window.
Yep, and I think you've all been up there and looked at that facility, like we said, right now, everything is fine the way it's operating, but it has reached its useful life. And it's definitely time to replace it. So yeah, hopefully it'll last another year and a half if nothing major will happen up there. Good questions. Any other questions on anything? Okay.
Motion to adapt resolution 2020-12 approving the submission of the application to the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority for the loan from the drinking water revolving fund for the improvements to the water systems by constructing a new water treatment facility and new water supply well as described in the loan application.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll get to that resolution
Sewer rate increase and water rate increase. So we need to discuss this.
Well, the staff is recommending that your increase is made. This recommendation comes on the shoulders of presentations made by Minnesota Rural Water and recommendations of our audits from 2014 to present. We have been running a deficit in both the proprietary funds or the enterprise funds, as you know them here. And in particular, on the sewer side of things, we have made a legally binding covenant with Public Facilities Authority, whom we hope to get some proceeds from for our next project. If we don't fund to the tune of 105% per statute of what we borrowed, we're not gonna get the new money that we need. Minnesota Rural Water did recommend that we raise our base and take away the gallons that are part of that base. and then increase the per thousand usage from 2.23 to 517. Now, in speaking with PFA, they'd like to see a gradual, they'd agree to a gradual improvement, increase on the water side, but not so much on the sewer side, because that's where we really over. So my recommendation to the city council is that we please leave the 2,500 gallons provision of our base rate, but increase only for any consumption of water beyond the 2,500 to 517 instead of 223, so that the impact is manageable for the average daily household.
I think it should be stated too that when we did the rate study last summer, these increases will get us just to where all the surrounding towns already are.
Yes.
So,
Well, and then just so you can state here on that sewer one, that we signed that in 2006, that we were supposed to be meeting that 105% of that loan payment. And we haven't been meeting that since 2006, so we've been out of compliance since 2006. So if we'd ever been audited or checked into, we've actually haven't been in compliance.
And the auditors actually have said that. So,
Yeah, so it's not a surprise, but I mean, we have to get to that to get any funding to do anything, so.
and, you know, I asked about the gradual on that side for the sewer as well, and I was very kindly referred back to the document.
So there's no, I mean, we can't gradually raise that one because we signed the contract in 2006, so that has to stay where it's at.
That goes back to the expansion of the sewer plant when we signed that contract, and we put in the best.
Is that what it was?
That's,
I don't know.
that's when this was signed, and that's when we said that we'd do 105%.
Any more discussion?
No, we knew it was coming.
Sorry, guys.
yeah. I'll motion to approve increases to the city's water and sewer rates in the following manner. Water usage and water sewer charge are to remain fixed at 567 and 220 respectively, along with the 2,500 gallons of water included as part of the base rate. The charge assessed per every 1,000 gallons of water consumed beyond 2,500 gallons will increase from 223 to 517. Sewer usage charges to increase from $1.99 and $3.96 per 100 cubic feet of water used to $2.80 and $5.57 per 100 cubic feet of water used. Sewer service charge to increase from $15.68 to $22.07.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Julie, I do have one question. When are you gonna put this in effect? Because that is something that,
That's not part of this though.
right, that
The
we,
staff has to determine that after this passed.
well, we need to, the council in the past has been our directive when it's been.
This is the directive. After they vote, then I have to meet with you and with Liz to see when that happens.
Okay.
Any other discussion?